In this video, I want to go through all the different options that you can use when it comes to your LinkedIn ad targeting. I want to walk you through step by step how you can find the best audience for your LinkedIn ad campaigns so that your campaigns can actually be profitable. Everything from a cold audience to even retargeting we'll discuss today. So targeting is done on the campaign level inside the LinkedIn Ads Manager. So let's go into a dummy campaign that I've already set up, but it is not complete. And we're gonna go into edit and launch. All right, so let's see what options actually exist under the audience section. We can begin with the basics, all right? So the basics are that if you wanted to go after a saved audience that you've already built in the past, you can absolutely do that. In fact, whenever you do build an audience that you want to continue to reuse, it's as simple as just saving the audience, naming it as something, and then it should show up directly into the saved audiences section where you can then reuse it. But let's assume that you don't have anything quite like that yet. So what do? Well, the first parameter that you can set is so you can pick whatever country you want to go after. So if you're going after the States or Canada or whatever country, you can just define that right here. And that is almost always going to be the first thing that you'll set up for your ad targeting. Now, if you do want to go after some sort of exclusion, and let's pretend it makes sense for all Americans except someone who lives in Texas. So if that's the case, we can just click exclude Texas, and that will allow us to get rid of the entire state and all those inside it. And you can now see it's been added to the stack of filters. Every time you want to add additional things to filter your audience on, you just need to click narrow here, and then you're able to then pick whatever your next set of criteria are. So the difference between these two sections here, audiences versus audience attributes, is that audiences is more if you are trying to flesh out retargeting or lookalike lists. So building custom audiences that you could then go very granular on. Don't worry about that quite yet, because we'll get there. But any sort of basic campaign or any new campaign that you're going to be building for a cold audience will almost always be utilizing audience attributes, which will essentially give you the different parameters from company to demographics to education, job experience, etc., etc. So this is where we're going to spend some time now. Let's go into company first and see what options are available for you, okay? So there's a couple things, industries being the most obvious one. If you want to go after specific industries, this is where you would essentially find most of them. But you can also look at company revenue, how large the company is. Keep in mind, this is not 100% accurate. It's not like LinkedIn actually knows how much your company is generating in terms of revenue, so it's just kind of best guessing. So as you are utilizing this metric, just make sure that you know that it's not 100% accurate. We can go back to company here. Size is more about employee count, and this is probably a bit more accurate because obviously inside LinkedIn, people will say that I am working for Microsoft, I am working for Google. So it does have a relatively accurate guess of how many employees work at that particular company. So if you're trying to go after companies of a certain size, this is probably a better way than just using revenue. So that's another option. You can also look at growth rate, but like I said, just like with revenue, it's really difficult for them to know how fast a company is growing. They're much more likely to just be basing this off of employee growth, which is, I guess, a little bit of a good proxy for overall company growth, but not 100% accurate. Now, just for the sake of this example, let's just click software, and we'll use that as our industry. And then we'll move on from that. We want to then add another filtering device. So let's go back to audience attributes and let's go to demographics. And there's only really two options here. There's gender, and then there's also age. Now, generally speaking, I'm not gonna really filter based on gender ever, but if you wanted to, you could. Age might make a bit more sense. Maybe you're going after someone who is a bit more senior and mature in their career. So if that's the case, perhaps 55 and above or 35 and above. So those could be good options. Let's continue to narrow it further, and let's look at even education. So we're gonna have to go back to audience attributes here. We go to education, and then let's see what options we have available. So we have degrees, and you can actually say what type of degree minimum you're looking for, because keep in mind, LinkedIn typically does take that type of information from their users. Fields of study, same thing. If you are really specific trying to focus on people who are in a particular field, you can use this, but generally speaking, I think using job titles makes more sense, and we'll get to that part as well. So I'm gonna actually leave the education section blank. Let's move on to job experience, which I think is more interesting. Generally speaking, I like to use the job titles as being the primary way I can find the folks that I'm looking for. So maybe CEO, check chief executive. So I found there, maybe founder, and you can just continue putting in more and more categories that you think make sense given what you're trying to sell to. And the reason why I like to use job titles best is because it does allow you to type it out. Whereas with functions or seniorities, it's more of a, you got to pick between a drop down, and the drop down doesn't necessarily have all the different options out there. So that's why the job titles with the flexibility of just typing it out is a bit better in my opinion. Job experiences is also something that I would typically like to use. So you can actually define how long they've been at their particular role for. And that's something that I think is a really, really cool type of metric to be able to filter your ads based on, because sometimes you're going after people with a bit more maturity or sometimes you're not, right? So it depends on what you are trying to angle your ads towards. All right, so now that we've set up those two job experience metrics, we can continue to narrow the audience further. And then we can start looking at other options such as even interests and traits. And this is really quite unique because with interests and traits, you can even start to figure out what is it that these people are just curious about. Are they interested in startups? Are they interested in music? Maybe you'll find that certain psychographic tendencies match well with the type of client that you're trying to sell to. So if that's the case, you can utilize all of these different options, right? You can go to member groups, where obviously LinkedIn has a bunch of these groups where if you join, you're almost raising your hand saying, hey, I am in fact interested in horseback riding. There you are, horseback riding vacations. So if someone's interested in that, you can run a filter for that. So keep in mind, if you do use these things, it will cut down on your total quite aggressively, because these are oftentimes filters with quite a small sample size. So if you're generally speaking above, say 50,000 or even 100,000 of total audience size on your LinkedIn audience, that's a good thing, because it gives LinkedIn just more opportunity for them to run a search and find the right people for you. If it's too small, it becomes much more difficult, and oftentimes your ad costs will actually go up because you're limiting and you're forcing LinkedIn to go after such a small audience. Now, when you see all of this, it really becomes obvious as to why LinkedIn is so powerful. No other ad platform really gives you the degree of granularity and control over picking your ideal buyers. And certainly if you think about Facebook or Instagram, it's nowhere near as precise as with LinkedIn. And that's why LinkedIn is just better in this regard. Now, some people will say that the price you pay for this higher level of precision is that LinkedIn ads are a bit more expensive, and that can be true. But there's also a lot of strategies that you can deploy in order to minimize how much you're spending on LinkedIn and maximizing the profitability of your overall campaign. So if you're curious about that, definitely check out this video that I've already created, which goes deeper into the actual strategy of how I set up my campaigns. But for now, this is just a video more so about how to understand the targeting options that you have at your disposal. Now, as you're creating your ads, oftentimes LinkedIn will by default enable audience expansion. I would certainly turn this off. The way that it works is that LinkedIn will actually look at all the different parameters that you've set up here, and it'll start to try to find additional people that you don't actually have these exact parameters, but they're resembling the parameters. So they're kind of like the next door neighbor or the second cousin of the types of folks that you're actually going after. And they will just add them to your overall list. In my opinion, it's a total waste of time, and I would definitely turn it off. So do so. So at this point, you have a pretty good understanding of overall how to target your audience, especially if you're looking to just have certain characteristics be your benchmark for who you're going after. You now know how to do this. So if that was all you needed to do, you could pretty much just complete and finish this campaign, and you can move on and create your ads and you're good to go. But what if you wanted to do retargeting, which is essentially an audience which has already been interacting with you in the past? Maybe they've visited your website, or they've already been viewing your videos and your ads. So because they already have this pre-existing history with you, they're warmer. Arguably, they would be much easier to convert into a customer than someone who's totally cold. So these retargeting audiences are not built the same way as these cold audiences are built. So let me quickly show you how you would be able to do retargeting as well. All right, so let's go all the way back, do this from scratch. We still do need to set a particular location, and from there, we can then click narrow. Now is where, instead of using audience attributes, which we did before because we were going after a colder audience, we can now just use audiences. And this is where we can actually click a couple of different options: retargeting, predictive, lookalike, list upload. So list upload is very simple. It's essentially where you just provide a spreadsheet, a CSV, and then LinkedIn will just target whoever is in that spreadsheet. So imagine you already have like an existing email list of 1,000 people that you've been building for the last year or two, and you want to start running ads to them. It's as simple as just providing LinkedIn the list of emails, and hopefully LinkedIn is able to match those emails to the LinkedIn profiles. It doesn't do this 100% accurately, by the way. You're lucky if you can even get like 70% of a match, but hey, if you can run ads to this audience that already knows who you are, maybe you can get some easier conversions. So this is a good way to remarket. Now, lookalikes are a little bit different because whereas retargeting, you're going after folks who have already seen your ads or have already interacted with your brand in some way, lookalikes are more an extension or a prediction of who else would be also interested. Because what happens is LinkedIn, as they accumulate more and more data of who likes your ads, they'll start being able to come up with some sort of like psychological profile of what this person looks like. Where do they live? What industries are they in? All these other data points, right? And based on all of those similar features, LinkedIn can then go and predict who else would be interested in your ads, and then they can just build that audience for you and try to sell to them. Now, it's really powerful on Facebook and Instagram. It's something that I think on LinkedIn, not quite as effective. Their machine learning algorithms in the back end just are not as good. And I believe they're actually getting rid of their lookalike audiences pretty soon. And fully replacing it with just the predictive audience, which is for all intents and purposes the exact same thing. But just keep in mind that these two, not about retargeting existing viewers, it's more so about trying to find new viewers that have a higher probability of liking your stuff based on similar characteristics. Now, retargeting is where I actually want to spend a little bit more time on. So there's a lot of options with retargeting, right? One option is you could go after people who've already been visiting your site. So in order to create this, you will need to, generally speaking, create the audiences first in the audience section of your ad account. So let's say you wanted to do that, right? You wanted to create some sort of retargeting audience based on the website. You would need to go name your audience. Let's say retarget audience site. And then you could also pick how long in the past they've been on your site for. So these are some of your options. And then from there, you can actually just enter the specific URLs that you are hoping to track. Because of course, if this is going to be on your website, you're going to need to be just telling LinkedIn, okay, which website pages should they be monitoring? Now, specifically for the website, in order to actually do it, you will need to put a specific line of code onto your website for them to be able to have visibility into what's happening on your site. Because remember, LinkedIn doesn't have access to your site normally. So if you're looking to set up these custom tracking codes on your website so that LinkedIn can have access, I'll talk about that in a separate video because that's a little bit technical and it'll require a separate explanation. So that's one option. Other options might be if they've actually checked out your LinkedIn page. And this one will not require any sort of fancy tracking code because obviously LinkedIn has access to who is already checking out your LinkedIn page because it's live on LinkedIn's website. You can do other things such as maybe people who have interacted with a video or a piece of content that you've created in the past. And this is what I really like to do because for me, what I oftentimes do is I create a top of the funnel ad. Let's say the top of the funnel ad is like a video, right? And then the video, let's say I serve 10,000 people to go and see it. And then of those 10,000 people, maybe 1,000 people actually watch 25% of that video. Well, these people, because they've watched so much of my video, you can assume that they are a better fit. They actually have the interest in my topics. By that logic, if these people are already warmer, already have a higher degree of buying intent, then why don't we spend more energy and effort into them? And this is exactly what we would be doing here, where we can actually create a video audience based on someone who had actually watched one of our videos in the past. So the way that you would do this is you would actually pick a previous campaign that you've already set up, and you would need to have this campaign already set up, because certainly if you're retargeting, the entire premise is based on the fact that you're retargeting someone who has already seen previous ads from a previous campaign. So pick the campaign that you want to be retargeting on, and then once you choose it, you can create that custom audience, and now you actually have that as the parameter upon which you can set up your retargeting ad campaign. So these are the options that I would have had. I could choose and click create new video audience. I'm not gonna do this because I've already done it in the past, and you can see that I've already done it because there's already options that have been popping up here. So if you were to launch this campaign, you would just pick amongst the existing audiences that you already have, and then you utilize that as your retargeting audience. Or if you don't like the existing ones, you just go and make a new one based on whatever new parameters that you have. And this is essentially how you do the retargeting. Now, one thing that you're gonna wanna know about retargeting is that you need a minimum of 300 members in your retargeting audience. If it's under that number, it just isn't a large enough sample size for LinkedIn to have enough data. That's why sometimes you'll need to let your campaigns go for a while so that it can accumulate enough people who have interacted with that ad for the retargeting audience of that campaign to be big enough that you can then serve up additional ads to. So that's pretty much it in regards to the targeting of your LinkedIn ad campaigns. Hopefully this was super helpful. Once again, there's other videos that I've made in the past and I will continue to make in the future that go really deep into LinkedIn ads and how you could be a really effective media buyer on this platform. So check them out if you haven't already. Hopefully this was helpful, guys. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do. It means a lot because I'm still a fairly small channel. And every time someone tells me that my content has been helpful, it actually does mean a lot for me. And by the way, if you're curious about how to actually utilize LinkedIn ads to grow your own client acquisition, or in general, how to systematize your lead flow so that you can build a more robust business, please book a call with me below, because I provide one-on-one consultation to companies around the world to help them scale. And to date, I've worked with over 150 plus companies, many of which have been able to scale successfully into the 7 and even 8 figures per year level. So if that's something that you're looking to do, I would love to meet you one-on-one, face-to-face over a call, and that way I can give you some recommendations on how you can move your business to the next level. So if that's the case, book a call with me below in the description box, and I will see you in that meeting. If you're not quite ready for that, that's cool too. We have a lot of other videos that you can definitely check out on my channel that can help you in your journey to growth. All right, cheers.